question actually, which is for Helen.
Sure.
In the last 16 or 17 years since I've been a people manager, I've found myself occasionally in the position of being an unofficial counsellor of people, or salespeople. I recently had a situation where a girl was very stressed and said she had no time to do this and was actually affecting her health. And over a period of time, trying to understand what she was doing, I came to her with a whole bunch of suggestions as to how she could create some time for herself. And every single suggestion was no. So my question is, when you come across people like that, what's a good strategy to
That's a really good question.
Through?
Very good question. So what I would suggest is when you try to help somebody to do something, it needs to come from them. So what I would have done, because they have the answers, it's just they've got blocks. What I would have done is ask that lady, what do you need to do? It needs to come from them. You would ask the question of them. What is it that you need to do? How do you think you can save some time? What are the areas of your life that you can cut down on perhaps? And they'll come up with the answers themselves. Because if it comes from you, there's a reason as to why they can't do it.
Okay, so I actually did do that, and she said she didn't know, and that's the reason I made suggestions.
Yeah.
And my favourite saying is people say I don't know.
Yeah.
And my usual response is, if you think you know, what's the answer?
Perfect.
And she still said I don't know. So I was really hitting a brick wall, and I just couldn't get rid of that. So,
Yeah. And so, with regards to her, I suppose you would find out what else is going on for her that's bringing her into this state. So what's happening underneath the surface? Did you find out any more about her personal situation or anything like that?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not more than what I read.
Yes, there's something else going on for her. And what happens is we do put blocks up consciously that we have to remove. So it's all about trying to find out what else is going on in terms of stresses and so on. Or perhaps asking her to go away and think about it and come back rather than being put on the spot.
Thank you. Throw over to Helen. Any thoughts about any of the things that you've heard?
Well, recently I was just reading at the moment around that automatic negative thoughts that sort of come in your mind, and they are that sort of automatic. And the last one to do it is that intention. So when am I going to do it and what am I going to do? That is statistically, and I make up statistics as most of them are, statistically you're more likely to follow through just by asking yourself, what am I going to do and when am I going to do it? You sort of set that intention. That I've also lost a bet because for continuing to drink beer. My wife and the children, thank you. Yeah, you are right, it's been a huge decline in beer. And I suppose going back to Glenn's, I think that one of the biggest challenges that is facing business is the changing way our customers are doing business. I think looking at it as a system, Glenn is probably a good analogy is that the model is almost the thing is, you're going to squeeze one area, it's going to either constrict or bubble out in the other area. And when you're looking at optimising your sales teams, you've got to be really careful that you treat it as a system so you don't cut value, that you cut waste. Because I think where we've traditionally, as I expect from FMCG, where we've traditionally sent road warriors into mum and dad route trade, I'd hate to be one of those road warriors these days because I think also it's not so much a digital world, it is the world that we live in, it is changing significantly. I was in Sydney last weekend and helping my father on a tablet put his bets on the TAB 83. That was unimaginable probably 5 years ago. That's the way he put his bets on now because it's far more convenient. And so there's no reason to think that sort of service that happens via some of the road warriors can't be replicated. But I think we've been a little bit renewed with blind.
I guess listening to Glenn, one thing that resonated for me was in the professional services area where I've operated most of my life is that the people who are really responsible for bringing in work are the people delivering it. And these people are reluctant. Engineers consider selling a horrible task. They're ashamed, they're embarrassed to actually sell things. So I think one of the things that we have to recognise in professional services is that when you have reluctant salesmen, don't try to make them into salesmen. I recall one of my people previously spent $2 million in Huthway trying to translate all of our engineers into salespeople is the biggest waste of money ever. So I think that when you're selling professional services, understanding that people are reluctant and providing them support systems in the background so they can do their job effectively and bringing in those specialist sort of sales pitches when they're required, I think is very, very important. So that's what I noticed about professional services is that most professional people hate the idea of selling. It's an embarrassment.
No, you can't just counter that. Every professional person is selling. Every profession, because a lawyer sells, doctor sells. We've got choices, as you just said. You electronically log in and choosing. They're all selling.
Oh,
The way you
understand
better
that.
educate people is that everyone's selling every day of the week.
Yep.
They just don't know they're doing it.
Every moment, every day, lady, selling you a coffee. You can choose 50 coffee shops in walking distance. Why do you go to one? So it's just the mindset for engineers. I've dealt with lots of mechanical engineers. They're fantastic constructors of things, solving problems. They don't realise they're actually selling. You just point it out to them. By the way, you just sold that.
They don't know. So what I'm saying is that they don't. They have the concept that we're put together of emerging functions of hunters and gatherers and making them into something different. I think that if you engage in a process, in my experience of 25 years managing professional service organisations, it doesn't work.
Yeah, the key to that is actually analysing, establishing that. A lot of businesses fall down by not doing that. They actually analyse and put the system in place to actually continuously analyse. And if they don't do that, then they can't really truly measure and understand that. Let's go, the salesman shit ass. Coming from a salesperson, the salesman shit ass. No, they're not. You're putting all this shit behind me that makes it too hard for me to actually achieve that. But without knowing that, you can't, from the management, look back and say, well, why aren't we succeeding? You can't analyse. And it's getting it into the budget, which is a point that Glenn was probably not trying to sell too much, but that's exactly what needs to be done to get the benefit and put in the budget.
I think if we like to pretty pointy sales terms, traditionally, I think now they're starting to spread out. So I think everyone is selling. It's understanding the role that they all play within that process is really important. You've got this whole value stream that a customer interacts with you, and it can get squeezed or broken at any point in time. And I think that's the customer experience is one of the ones that's most. How they deal with you all in that whole buying process and how you enhance that whole process is probably important. And the role that different people play along that process, I think, is one of the key pieces.
So going back to the theme of what Glenn outlined was optimisation. And optimisation ultimately means performance. So in terms of performance, particularly related to sales, everyone's selling. But usually in an organisation there's a certain group of people that actually carry the title of salespeople. So if you ever ask anyone how's the business going, they might say, well, my finance is not good, or my R&D is not as good as it needs to be. But generally what people will relate to is my sales are down or my profits are down. So what actually happens at the end is the visibility when you're in sales is very high, and where the rubber hits the road for performance and optimization, a lot of it relates back to sales. So in terms of sales, I wrote down 3 questions that we really need to be on top of. One, as sales managers or people involved in sales, do you really know what's going on? Not the assumptions that we made from last year or that we've inherited from someone. Do we really know what's going on in terms of sales? Secondly, have you really worked out what should be going on? Have you really taken the time to make the analysis that someone described? And the third thing was, how much time do you actually spend working on those sort of things instead of actually doing stuff, actually giving yourself enough time to think through what you should be doing and how well you're going. So in terms of optimization and performance, the thing that I want to pick up with is what Helen talked about. The sales process is very important. The management and managing is very important. The thing about the sales team is there's a lot of people involved. And relating back to what Helen said about when people do their best work is when they feel good. So as salespeople, how do you make your people feel good most of the time, if not all the time, because that is when they're going to do their best work. And that thing about getting anxious before a presentation, that's about a lot of energy building up. And the question is, how is that energy going to be released? Is it going to be released in a negative way, or is it going to be released in a positive way? So in terms of sales and optimization, you want a lot of energy to exist, and you want a lot of that energy to be released to get good performance outcomes. So I think part of the job in terms of sales management is energize your sales team, so a lot of that energy translates into better outcomes. So think about the salespeople, there's a lot of processes and so on, there's a lot of products, but the key thing about what salespeople do is relating to customers. How do you engage? What does that relationship need to look like so you get a good outcome? So the thought I'll leave you on is part of the role that you need to do is to manage energy. Manage the energy of your sales team so that energy is deployed for getting more customers, getting your customers to buy more, and making sure the relationship that you have, so that all that energy wrapped around it is the right one for you to get the outcomes you're looking for. That's at the heart of what sales is. It's about people. It's about relationships. You really need to spend a lot of time thinking about that so you get good outcomes with your people. Don't just manage them and measure them. So they do good work.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Spot on time, 9 o'clock. Thank you to Glenn and to Helen. Very informative. Thank you. And to our panel of experts. If you do have any questions, or if you'd like to talk further with Glenn and Helen, I think they're hanging around a little bit longer, so please feel free to stay behind and have a chat. Thank you all again for your attendance, and I hope you all have productive days. Thank you.
Again, thank you.